Hey guys, welcome to another Magic Online video. I'll be your host today. I'm Todd Anderson, and we're going to be playing some Jeskai mid-range. This deck is pretty similar to the one that we played at Grand Prix Providence. It was originally created by some guy on Magic Online. I don't really remember who or know who, but the person who showed us the deck initially was Patrick Dickman, and we sort of just all fell in love with the deck and decided to play it at Grand Prix Providence. None of us did really all that well, though, except for Dickman himself, so congrats to him for his top 16 finish. But I've played with the deck a reasonable amount since then, and I've been tweaking and tuning and trying out new things, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit more drastic. So let's go and take a look at the deck and go over all the changes. So initially there were 5 other 3-drop threats in the deck. There were 3 Goblin Rattlemaster and 2 Hordling Outburst, as well as 4 copies of Stoke the Flames. And all those cards kind of worked well together because they allowed you to play Stoke the Flames for cheap. They also allowed Soulfire Grandmaster to have a cheap buyback for Stoke the Flames. But the more I played with the deck, the more I just thought that Stoke the Flames was probably the worst card in the deck. And it was really frustrating to constantly get stuck without a second source of red or having a second red creature in play to be able to Stoke the Flames my opponent. So we're going to go a little bit more controlling today and see how that works out. Instead of that, we have some more cheap removal spells that only require 1 red mana, with 3 copies of Wild Slash to go along with 4 Lightning Strike, 2 Roast, and 2 Valor Stance, as well as 2 copies of Jeskai Charm. Now, one thing that's unique about Valor Stance in this deck is that it can act as a removal spell for your opponent's creature, but it can also protect a Dragon Lord Ojutai from dying to a spell removal spell like Murderous Cut or Hero's Downfall. There are going to be a lot of situations where we want to use Valor Stance aggressively to kill our opponent's creatures, not only to buy us some time, but also to fill up our graveyard to help us out with Treasure Cruise. Now, the original version played 2 copies of Dig Through Time, but I never really liked Dig Through Time in the deck. It always felt like I was trying to hit another land drop, and that just seemed pretty awkward when I wanted to hit a land off of a card that can only get 2 things, and 2 very specific things at that. So Treasure Cruise, this deck wants a lot of raw card advantage. It can leverage that into finding more cards with things like Ojutai's Command, or just hitting them with Ojutai itself. And so we're trying out Treasure Cruise in place of the Dig Through Times. Now, Dig Through Time was also double blue, which put a lot of strain on the mana base, but here it only costs 1 blue, and we can delve for 7 if we end up getting 7 cards in the graveyard, which would be great for us in games where we have only access to 1 blue mana. In post-board games, it's going to be even better because we have Disdainful Stroke and Gainsay for the control matchups. That way we can cast Treasure Cruise and still be able to fight back with a counterspell on their next turn. So the rest of the deck is pretty much the same. We have 3 copies of Stratus Dancer, 4 Soulfire Grandmaster, 4 Manus Rider, and then we're also trying out 1 Elspeth in the main deck. I was very impressed by how well Elspeth performed in the deck, acting as both a win condition and a way to sweep away things like Stormbreath Dragon and the like. Now, the one thing that this deck is soft to is Stormbreath Dragon, so if you think you're going to play against a lot of Stormbreaths, this version of the deck is not going to be that great for you. Now, Jeskai colors basically only have Stoke the Flames to kill it, but since we wanted to move away from that, I'm kind of just hoping that we don't play against Stormbreath Dragon all that much. Now, if we do end up playing against Stormbreath Dragon, our goal is going to be to kill their early mana-producing creatures with Wild Slash, Roast, Lightning Strike. That way, we can counter it with Ojutai's Command, or maybe just kill them before it gets onto the table. This version might end up playing a little bit more like a Jeskai Tokens deck than I would like, but since we, basically just trying to play a bunch of things to fill up the graveyard, cast Treasure Cruise, kill all the stuff our opponent's doing, and then just kill them in 1 or 2 big attacks with like Manus Riders and Ojutais. But I think this version is unique enough that it's at least worth exploring, even though it might end up being kind of like a worse version of Tokens. The sideboard, we have 3 Mastery of the Unseen to go along with our counter spells against control, a 3rd Valor Stance to help out against the green decks, a 2nd Elspeth to help out against the big creature decks, 3 Anger of the Gods to help out against mana producing decks, or decks with a bunch of mana dorks, or just sweep away a bunch of tokens from mono red. It's also pretty good against mono black aggro, which has been popping up a lot, the old warrior aggro deck, if you will. But yeah, mana base is pretty straightforward. A bunch of dual lands, 2 of each basic, 4 floating strands to go get the islands and plains, and the mountains just because we have a heavy red element and we don't always want to take a ton of damage from our lands. So that's the Jeskai mid-range deck. Let's go ahead and get to the matches.